Welcome to the Beer Connoisseur, Beer Buyers Club, and Gourmet Brewing's live stream and podcast. We're going to hear from amazing brewers as they share their secrets for their awesome beer. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I'm a certified Cicerone. Hi, now. I'm getting a terrible echo. Hang on one second. You know, these things are sometimes fraught with challenges, and I'm trying to figure out what that audio is coming from. And, I found it. There we go. All right. I think we are rolling again. And that actually did not do it. Let's see. Okay. Now I found it. We're going to try again. And I appreciate everybody's patience. It's always a challenge. So anyway, welcome to the Beer Connoisseurs, Beer Buyers Club, and Gourmet Brewing's live stream and podcast. We're going to actually hear from amazing brewers as they share their secrets for their awesome beer. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I'm a certified Cicerone and a certified BJCP beer and meads judge. And I hope you'll join me on my journey as I learn more about fine beverages, and I hope to bring you along with me. So it looks like we got some nice folks in the chat. I see Chris and Joe, Aaron, Katie. Man, we're so glad to have everybody. Jeremy, Don, Fred, who's one of our brewers in the chat. So everybody is in the chat, and I so appreciate that. Let me know where you're viewing this from. That's kind of the fun part about all of this. Now, I want to bring on our brewers in just a second, if I can bring all them on successfully. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up next. All right. So, in just a few minutes, we're going to get to hear from each one of them. We have Ryan Jackal from Wiseman Brewery in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Phil Markowski at Two Roads Brewery and Area Two Experimental Brewing in Stratford, Connecticut. We have Fred Carm, Hoppin Frog Brewery in Akron, Ohio, and Chris Elliott at Wild Leap Brew in LaGrange, Georgia. Now, with each brewer, we're going to hear about their brewery. We're going to discuss one of their beers, and then they'll answer your questions. And then we're going to learn about what's coming up next at their brewery. So right down there at the bottom center, there is a call to action button. Matter of fact, it's right about pretty close to Chris on my screen anyway. If you will click on that, you can just submit your questions. What I will ask you, though, is direct it for a particular brewer, because we're going to do in each one of their segments their particular questions for the most part. So, Guy puts your name. So, actually, Ryan is going to be our first brewer from Wiseman Brewery. So, if you've got some questions for him, how about jumping in there and writing some for him? Gourmet Brewing provides content related to brewing and enjoying the very best in fine beverages. Now, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there's a green follow button. If you would click on that, you'll always be notified when the live stream events occur, and actually that count helps draw speakers. The speakers that I bring at these events like to look at that count, and so the higher it is, the higher ranking folks that we can get, and we get some great speakers, but we can get even better. So that's just something that won't cost you anything, but it is a big help to me. The Beer Connoisseur is one of the highest read and most trusted sources of beer knowledge worldwide, with over 8 million readers. Their Beer Buyers Club provides an opportunity to buy highly rated and sought-after beers through Tavour, spelled T-A-V-O-U-R. The Tavour app is available in both Apple and Android version and allows members to purchase unique beers which are delivered to your home, very fresh. Click on the green button in the bottom center to learn more. So again, I like the chat is really lighting it up. I see Dan and Jules and Eric. So, man, I'm glad all you guys have joined us. And I want to also welcome our newest sponsor. Our newest sponsor is Precision Fermentation. Now, they're the creator of Brew Monitor, the industry's first comprehensive real-time fermentation monitoring system. Brew Monitor live stream dissolved oxygen, pH, gravity, pressure, temperature, and conductivity from existing fermentation tanks to any smartphone, tablet, or PC. Continuous sampling, 24/7 remote tracking, and deep data analytics can greatly improve operational efficiency, as well as help prevent problems and ensure batch-to-batch consistency. For more information about Brew Monitor and to start a free 30-day trial, visit precisionfermentation.com/TBC. Now, the internet is really stressed, so sometimes if you're having issues getting a good signal, in the bottom right-hand corner, if you put your pointer there, there's a little gear symbol that will show up, and that'll allow you to reduce the resolution of your screen and maybe make your whole event more smoothly running. Refreshing your screen fixes things most of the time. Again, ask your questions in the Ask a Question field. And we've got a poll. So if you've got your poll, if you can get us an answer there, that would be wonderful. Don't put questions, though, in the chat field. So, because we may not see that there. All right. So we're getting ready to bring the Brewers on, and I want to bring on Ryan Jackal. And I'm going to change over a couple of things here, Ryan, as we bring you on. And we just about have everything clicked. I wish this were a little bit faster, but it's not. Thank you for your patience. All right. So Fred, how did I do that? So I wasn't doing very good with that, and I managed to have everybody up but the right guy. Okay, this is not starting off well. All right, so let's try again. Let's get Mr. Ryan on screen. Fred, we'll see you in a little bit. And Chris, we're going to see you in a few minutes also. All right. So I told you this is, and actually we've got a new feature on this. I actually can get up to 6 brewers on screen. So this is a big improvement. So Ryan, welcome. That was a pretty rough intro. And I am not hearing your audio, Ryan. I have toggled your mic. Try it again. Oh, dear. No audio. We might have to skip ahead. Let's check everybody.
Is that working? Can you hear me now?
I hear you real weakly. All right, let me see if this is universal or not. So, Fred, I'm turning on your mic. Or Chris, excuse me. Chris, can we hear you?
Yes. Can you?
Oh, wow. Nobody's mic is working.
Uh-oh.
Can anybody hear me? Are you guys hearing me?
Hello? Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
I'm hearing you very, very weakly, Ryan.
Okay.
Wow. Fred, I'm going to bring you up. Let's see.
Can they say if they can hear us or not?
What's happening?
Fred?
Yeah,
nobody's audio is working.
Can you hear me now? I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear all. We can hear everything.
Look down there.
All three.
You can hear us all.
All right.
Looks like they can hear us. Yeah. The show must go on.
Well, now that's really strange.
I hear everybody.
This is going to be difficult.
Phil, can you say something?
Yeah, it might be. Let's see. Oh,
I hear you.
Yeah, I bet it is. Okay, thank you. Now let's see. Hang on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Aha.
There you go.
Thank you. Who was it that said that? Chris. Thank you, Chris. Wow. This is rough. I hate live. But I like it. I mean, it's so much fun. All right. Well, this is really off to a rough start. Okay, so we're going to try again. So, Phil, we'll see you in a minute. Fred, we will see you in a minute. And Chris, we will see you in a minute. And Ryan, speak.
I'm here, man. Can you hear me?
And it was never your fault.
That's story of my life.
Well, my apologies. I think everything will go smoother after the start. So
that sounds good. You want me to give an intro or?
No, I'd like to give you your intro that I promised.
Okay.
But I am going to need a beer pretty quick.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So we're going to start with Ryan Jackal of Wise Man Brewery in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He attended the University of North Carolina for a BS in Business Administration and Rockingham Community College for craft brewing, distilling, and fermentation. He's the head brewer at Wise Man Brewing since opening in February 2017. And Ryan, we've seen each other several times at the North Carolina Craft Brewers Guild Conference there. You have a great place there. I love visiting, and you're always so nice to host a big group of us when we're there.
Absolutely. We love doing it. You actually just stole a lot of my thunder there. That was kind of the intro. I'd say, like you said, we opened up in February of 2017. We're in a really old building. It took about 2 years to do the build out, but the final product was pretty cool. We got a nice sized tap room, a good sized beer garden. Of course, we can't use that to the full extent right now with all the restrictions, but so we got a nice little place in Winston-Salem. I guess our business model, I'd say, is just pumping out a lot of variety. We're all about just doing different recipes, playing around with different ingredients, constantly pushing the envelope with new techniques. But we love doing different styles. We like classic styles. We like doing the new and trendy beers. We're even experimenting with ciders and hard seltzers, believe it or not. But that's pretty much who we are and what we do. I think in the past 3.5 years, we've pumped out somewhere around like 125 different recipes. So it's not uncommon for us to release, to have a new release like every week. Business grow quite a bit, plus our knowledge, I guess. The more experience we have playing around with all these different ingredients and different styles, the more we learn and hopefully get a little bit better from it. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We do self-distribution. We have kind of a tight radius. We do about 75, maybe 90 mile radius on each side of us for self-distribution. That's more for logistics and just because that's how much beer we can pump out. But yeah, the past 3 years have been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, I truly am ready for that beer after that rough start.
Join me.
Yeah, I will. So I'm going to first of all kind of jump in here on the label because I think labels are so much fun, especially cans. They seem to have embraced that as a new art form. Yeah,
for sure. So that label is actually the result of COVID. Don't want to put a negative connotation on it, but back in March when everything went down, we pretty much had to come up with a way to get all of our beer out, right? Because we're doing at least half of our beer packaged in kegs, draft, right? But when all the restaurants and the bars shut down, that obviously went kaput. So we were able to pivot pretty quick and just do a generic template, right? So what you see on that label there, I don't know if you can see, the social distance series, little tab right there.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so it makes it really easy for us to just make decisions on the fly and say, okay, this beer all we got to do is put the name of it on the can and change the color scheme and the scripture and whatnot, and we're able to just pump those out. Versus a lot of our other cans, we were investing a lot of time and money with local artists, and the cans they turn out for not phenomenal. But the way the world is right now, we're just trying to crank out all these different styles as fast as we can. It's nice to have a template. So that looks like a nice pour. You've done that a few times.
I have. Well, you were nice enough to send me more than one, so I got to practice.
Right on. I think I can almost smell the hops through the screen. That's amazing.
It is. It is delicious smelling. I can't wait to dive into it. So tell us more about it. And I want to bring our other brewers back on screen while we sit here and salivate over this guy.
Yeah, I wish everybody else had one of these in front of them, and I hope some of the listeners out there right now happen to have some. But obviously it's a New England IPA, the High Clouds and Haze. The name kind of says it all. It's a hazy New England style, and there's a couple of main factors I think that make a good New England or hazy style beer. One obviously is the hops, right? So we put a boatload of hops in this beer. Technical terms, probably like around 4 or 5 pounds per barrel total going into this beer. So it's like borderline wasting money, but I think the final product speaks for itself. We've got a trifecta of hops going on in here. So the first one is Citra, and most people are probably pretty familiar with Citra. It's just a good base hop that we actually use in just about all of our IPAs, or quite a few of them. So it sets the stage with like a good prominent, juicy, citrusy punch. And then the second hop that we added in on this was Laurel hops. So Laurel hops are kind of new to the scene. I think they're a couple years old, or they've been out for a few years. And they pretty much contribute some of that herbal or some of that floral part of the aroma. So it's just another layer of complexity. And then we put in another boatload of Sabro hops, which is one of my favorite new hops or newer hops. With that Sabro, you get tangerine, believe it or not, a good punch of that. And what's really unique about that hop is you can get some mint character out of it. So it's like all three of those together just kind of come together to create like a really nice, complex, but pleasant hop profile. So, and then the second part of that is, or second part of a really good New England, in my opinion, is the smoothness, right? So once you take a swig of that, you're probably going to notice right off bat that it's kind of got like a nice silky, smooth body and feel to it, right? And so one of the tricks that you do to get that in there is we use oats, right, in the grain bill. So it can be flaked oats, it can be golden naked oats, all kinds of different oats add different levels of complexity, sweetness, mouthfeel, all that good stuff. But what you're getting out of those is you're getting starches, you're going to get some proteins, you're going to get some of the gummy compounds like the beta glucans and whatnot, and all that help really lend a hand to that smoothness, kind of that velvety character. Along with one of the other characteristics of a New England or a hazy IPA is the haze. Those compounds help contribute some haze by binding to hop oils and some other compounds that are floating around in the beer.
The tangerine is very distinct. It's one of the most strongest tangerine. I mean, it's phenomenal. But there's no tangerine actually in it?
No tangerine in it. No, that's all hops. Okay. That's mostly the Sabro hops. And we use, for the hops, I guess one more thing is that we don't really add much in the boil, right? Because in the boil, you're going to extract a lot of bitterness. So it's all late additions. Brewers know that as whirlpool hops and especially dry hops, right? So we're really trying to retain all the essential oils and the flavor and aroma compounds versus getting the bitterness. So it all kind of plays together, in the end with just a nice, smooth, silky, Nice complexity, the mouthfeel and everything, the hops, it all comes together.
Yeah, it's not at all what you'd expect with 62 IBUs on the side of the can. It's nowhere near that in perception.
Well,
Ryan,
glad you enjoy.
Yeah. Well, let's move into the questions. Because you've already got some. So we're going to start this one. This one's from Chris. Chris says, can you tell us a little bit more about Zachary Smith Reynolds, who inspired the name for the High Clouds and Haze?
I can tell you a little bit. So this is kind of a unique naming process that we came up with on this. But let me start off by typically all of our beer names come from quotes, right? So we usually try to tie a quote in or look up quotes that somehow tie into the beer, whether it's where the beer style originated from, or maybe a special ingredient and all that good stuff, So it's pretty easy. It's a good platform for us to come up with names, because Lord knows it's not easy coming up with beer names these days that aren't already taken. But with this one, it was actually a collaboration that we did with Wake Forest University, and they're here in Winston-Salem. And it was specifically tied in with their library. And Zachary Reynolds, that's what the library was named after. He's one of the RJR tobacco tycoons' sons. And he was kind of a local legend. So he flew around the world way back in the day. He was really young. And the library actually did some research and found some of his flight logs that had very little scripture in it. But one of them was that he was flying and experiencing high clouds and haze. So we were like, boom, done.
Cool. Great name.
Yeah. Got lucky with that one.
I love the name stories. All right. That was a good one, Chris. Thank you for asking that one. Looks like Don's got the next one for you. Ryan would like to hear the most important processes to make delicious IPAs, particularly West Coast styles.
West Coast styles. Obviously using the traditional West Coast style hops, to start off with, your C's, say your Columbus, your, the CTZ, right? Tomahawk, Zeus. I would start off with that. Don't go with the lazy New England yeast strains, right? You want a nice clean yeast strain, like something like SO5 or a Chico yeast strain that's actually going to attenuate well and flock out. Just a touch of specialty grains. I wouldn't use too much crystal, but you do need to have a little bit in there. Then just mostly base malt. No oats. Save those for your New Englands. And then one teardrop at the very end of the brew. You got to put that in the kettle.
A teardrop.
Or sweat. I don't know if you're
or sweat. Okay.
West Coast, yeah.
All right. The secret ingredient. Well, that was a great question. Ryan, we've got at least one more here. Do you prefer whirlpool hopping or dry hopping for New England IPAs? This comes from Gary.
Both. Yeah, both. It's a trick question, I guess. I think they're both pretty necessary. We add in quite a bit in the whirlpool, and then quite a bit in dry hopping. So you're really getting two different things there. When I look at hops, the additions, I'm looking at 3 different times you can do it in general. You have your boil additions. The earlier in the boil, you're going to just pretty much be extracting your alpha acids, right? You're getting that bitterness, which is important for balance of the beer as well, right? Because if you don't have any in there, then it's just going to be a super sweet, cloying beer, right? The second addition you could do, or the general idea there, is the whirlpool hops, or the late additions. And with those, you still do get a little bit of bitterness, with our whirlpool additions, I know we're still extracting some, which, like I said, you want a little bit. But what you're mostly getting there at the end of the boil is flavor. So that's considered your flavor additions. And then for dry hopping, you're really just after, for the most part, you're just after the aromatics. Because if you're throwing it in on the hot side, you're basically just getting rid of all those great aroma compounds. I mean, it might smell great going into the kettle, but you're never going to get that smell back, right? It's volatilized. It goes straight out. So you try to retain it by dry hopping. So if you really want the perfect beer, you have to do all three. In my opinion, they all kind of lend a little piece to the puzzle.
Don said on his previous question, the teardrop was what he was missing.
Awesome. I'm glad I could help.
All right. One more question. And Dan asked this one. Oh, let's see. It was for Phil. I'm sorry. I thought it was one for you. How about, let's see. This would be a good one for you. Eric asked, do you believe the haze craze will move into other styles besides IPA, or will clear and unfiltered ales be next?
Yes. Who knows? It's so hard to tell these days. Everybody's always trying to push the envelope and, what's the next thing? I feel like West Coast style IPAs can make a serious comeback. I know I miss them. I really like them. I do enjoy a good hazy IPA as well, but yeah, definitely think the West Coast is on the horizon as a comeback. The lagers, your clean and crisp definitely have a place. But in my opinion, every beer does have its time and place, right? I don't really have a favorite beer. I think if I'm out fishing, I'm going to grab one of the big boys beers, and that's just what I grew up on. If I'm wanting a really good treat, then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to have a hazy, juicy IPA or an imperial stout. It really just depends on the mood. But yeah, as far as trends go, who knows what's going to happen next? Might be hazy hard seltzers. I don't know.
What?
No hazy hard seltzers. dry hop ciders. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, with the popularity, I don't know that it's really hit commercial too much, but with Kvike and the Norwegian styles, they're not only hazy but even a raw beer. So. And
we've
flavors...
experimented a lot with the Kvikes. And one of the fun things about our brewery is somebody could sum it up and just say our whole brewery is an experiment. We constantly have 25, 30 different little small batches laying around and 10 different homebrew size yeast strains coming in every week. But playing around with Kvike, that could be the next thing. It seems like that kind of already hit its peak and is starting to come back. The Brute IPA, everybody remembers the Brute IPA. We did that once. It seemed like that trend came and went overnight. It's just wild. Who knows? It might make a comeback, but yeah.
Eric says Kvike's a joy to work with, and as a home brewer, I have to say I like it. It's so quick.
It absolutely is, and you can ferment at 95 degrees. Put it outside right now in the middle of the summer. It'll be done tomorrow. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, Ryan, what would be some of the highlights going on at Wiseman coming up in the next few weeks or months? Some things folks can look forward to from your brewery?
Oh, I'd love to say that that we're going to have some bands and some fun events and all that good stuff, but right now it's just not happening. We are kicking into high gear on coming up with more can releases. So I'd say definitely be on the lookout. We've got one getting released, I think this Friday, Chasing Happiness. It's a Hefeweizen. We've been wanting to can that thing forever, but just never really had the push until now, So we're getting the push to really start canning and releasing a lot of fun beers that we've been wanting to do for a long time. So I'd say be looking out for that. Yeah, lots of fun stuff coming up.
Well, first of all, I want to say cheers to you, because that is one fine beer. Let's get the label pointed in the right direction.
Excellent.
There we go.
Yes.
So cheers. Very nicely done. And Phil, cheers. You're up next as soon as we get done here. So again, Ryan, thank you so much. I'm sorry for the rough start.
It's okay. I like a rough start. That's funny. Honestly, thank you for having me. This has been an honor, and I really appreciate it. So, cheers.
Well, a lot of fun. Real pleasure getting to know you. Well, Phil, been anxious to hear from you, and we'll try and get this part of the party started, and I think things will go a little more smoothly from here. At least I'm counting on that. It couldn't have gotten off to a rougher start. So just so everybody kind of knows, again, we're doing this in segments, roughly on the half hour, and what I'm anxious to do is hear from Phil Markowski of Two Roads Brewing and Area 2. Now, Phil has been a professional craft brewer since 1989. He's a 31-year industry veteran with past stints at New England Brewing and Southampton Public House. Phil is one of 4 co-founders of the Two Roads Brewing Company, and he founded 2012 and it was ranked 46th largest craft brewery in 2019. Phil is also the author of Farmhouse Ales, released in 2005, and that's a BA book, isn't it, Phil?
Yes, it is. Brewers Publications.
Yeah, I thought it was. Well, tell me about Two Roads. I have never been there, and Area 2 is even more intriguing. It's a especially intriguing name.
All right. Well, first, let's start with Two Roads. So Two Roads is something that two of the 3 of us who are the co-founders have been talking about doing for some 20-odd years. And long story short, around 2010, we started getting serious about the project. And, just started to come up with a more refined business plan. We actually dusted off an old business plan that we had used 15 years before that. And we started looking for buildings. And one of the things that was really an essential part of our business plan was to renovate and resurrect an old factory building, of which there are unfortunately too many of them here in the Northeast that are everywhere and clustered in certain areas. And Stratford, where we wound up locating, is one such town that has an industrial past, and is a city that's been able to reinvent itself. But again, we were looking to do something in Connecticut, where 3 of the 4 of us were born and raised, and it was essential for us that we locate in an old factory building and resurrect that. And the building that we eventually found used to be called the U.S. Baird Corporation, and its motto was, "We make machines that make machines." So they used to make large machines for bending and forming metals. And the factory that we bought was built in 1911. So it was approximately 100 years old when we found it, and fell in love with it right away because it had some great features. Just a classic manufacturing building, 40-foot, high bay area, mezzanines on the side. It was a real diamond in the rough. It just really needed to be cleaned up and given some TLC. The company that was here had left about 8 years before that, so the building was still well maintained, and it really, again, was a diamond in the rough. So we cleaned it up. We brought equipment in. We did it quickly. We bought the building, and 7 months later, we were doing our first test brews. And 9 months after we started renovating the building, we opened up our tasting room and started releasing the first beer to the public. And one thing I'll say about Two Roads is that we set up with the business goal of really starting off with other people's volume, and then launching our own brands, and then growing into the space. It's a very large space. It's about 100,000 square feet all told, of which we have about 70,000 square feet. And we have a tenant that has 30,000. And it was a big space, but we wanted to build a brewery once, and therefore we had to build it big. So we started off with other people's volume and then launched our own brands. And now we're about at parity. So about 50% of our capacity production is Two Roads brands, 50% are our contract customers. We have a 100-barrel brew house. So it's a large facility. We'll run 24/7 in the brewery. So it's really kind of a big operation that's gotten big in a relatively short period of time. But that doesn't mean we're not about the highest quality beers that we can produce and about variety. So Two Roads, we do of our own brands approximately 30 different brew streams or recipes per year. And this is what we call our quote unquote clean facility. And then in 2017 we broke ground on Area 2, which is just about 1,000 feet down the road. And Area 2, as the name implies, is all about experimental brewing. Now, experimental brewing or experimental means different things to different people, but for us, we like to push the envelope. We like to do both, traditional beers, which in some cases are these barrel soured, lambic-like beers. But by no means is that all we do. It's really about, in our view, stretching the definition of what beer is and what beer can be. And to us, that's what experimental means. So from a consumer standpoint, we have two different tasting rooms. And at Area 2, what I would like, if somebody walks in, I want them to walk out with an expanded definition of what beer is or what beer can be. So that's kind of our goal, but it's also to have fun with it. It's a fine line to respect brewing traditions, but also not be afraid to step away from them and push the boundaries. So that's how we see it. It's a facility that's geared toward wood aging, but it's more than just that. The picture you just threw up is our cool ship. So we opened Area 2 in 2019. We've only been open about a little over a year. We had our first anniversary party, and then the next weekend we were mandated to close down. So COVID hit in earnest at that point. But one of the pride and joy of the facility is our cool ship. And in the picture here, our cool ship is built as a separate building in the back end of Area 2, which faces a wetlands preserve. And we purposely faced it in that direction with the assumption that there's a rich microflora that lives in that wetlands area, be it plants, insects, birds, whatever. It's its own little ecosystem, and we theorize, and I strongly believe it, that area is going to seed the cool ship and populate it with some interesting bacteria and wild yeast. But most importantly, these will be yeasts and bacteria that are representative of that little space. Whether they're unique or not totally remains to be seen, but this is kind of like in what in wine speak they call terroir. So this is our own little corner of the world, and the microbes that are there are most likely unique to that space, and hopefully that translates into the beer that we produce there. It's a large cool ship. It's 50 barrels. And the facility is 25,000 square feet at Area 2. So it's geared toward, larger production and, good capacity of barrels. Right now we have roughly 500 barrels in the facility, and there's room for much more. But, we're not rushing it. We're growing it organically and slowly and expanding the size of the facility. And, we're not necessarily trying to make it really big. We're trying to have have a facility where we can comfortably make an amount of beer that is meaningful. And also the types of beers we produce there have, in many cases, a near infinite or at least indefinite shelf life. So these can be shipped far and wide and still be stable once they're out there. So, we're having fun with it. We're doing some unique things. We've isolated a couple of yeast strains that were, right from our facility after many failures of trying to isolate, an interesting yeast strain that can actually ferment beer wort. We had many failures, many duds, and then came across a couple of strains that worked, and it was, a little bit of a eureka moment. And we have two of those yeasts in circulation right now. One we captured during Hurricane Sandy, even before we opened the doors at Two Roads. And that is the basis of a beer called Urban Funk, which I happen to have one right here. So Urban Funk is a beer that, ironically, in this facility that's made to produce barrel-aged beers, this is the only beer that is actually fermented in steel and concrete only, no wood. So it's kind of an anomaly, but it is one of the flagship brands that we produce there. And again, it's something we've been working on actually since 2013, and then it's kind of been in constant use since. This unique, not just a unique strain of yeast, it's at this point a stew of bacteria and microbes that we don't even fully know what's in there, but it's something that we've been nudging along, and it's stabilized now, and we just feed it and keep it going, and it's been in constant circulation. So we're doing a lot of different stuff, and we're just starting to ship more of the beer out. Obviously, our home area is Connecticut, and we're predominantly available in the Northeast, but we're starting to ship out into other markets throughout the country, and with an emphasis on Area 2 products, in part because they have a long shelf life.
So, Phil, is the synopsis, is that brewed in the cool ship that's in the green screen behind me?
It is not brewed in the cool ship, but it is a very complex process to produce that beer.
Okay.
The name synopsis is in a way kind of a summation of how the beer came to be. It's actually a sum total of a number of different fermentations. There are 7 different fermentation agents that go into making a Synopsis brand. And we're talking about the Synopsis Blackberry this evening, but we've done to date 6 different flavors. And Synopsis brand is inspired heavily by traditional fruited lambics, only the process time is considerably shorter. It's longer than most beers, about 3 months, longer than your typical IPA, even your typical lager, but it's much shorter than a traditional barrel soured fruited lambic style beer, which we do many. But Synopsis is something that's inspired by that process and that legacy. So enough talking about it. Why don't we open one up?
Yeah.
I've got one on my end. You've got one on yours.
I am on that page. Let's do it.
All right, Doug, I'm a few seconds ahead of you, so here, I won't steal your thunder.
No, you go ahead and talk. Everybody can see what it's doing.
So again, we change up the fruits that we use, but the process the basic process is the same for these brands. So it starts off with kettle souring, a base wort. And then we, after the kettle souring, bring it back in the brewery. Then we boil it to neutralize that bacteria that sours it. And then we add some hops and boil it, send it over. Actually, and we ferment this at Area 2, but we currently do not have a brew house at Area 2. So what we do have is a 1,200-foot pipeline that connects Area 2 with two roads. So two roads is where the wort is brewed, sent over the pipeline, fermented at Area 2. And our primary fermentation is done in the mixed culture. That is a single strain of Saccharomyces and then a blend of 3 different Brettanomyces. And also we put wood chips in the fermenter to get just a hint of that oak character. And it's a long primary fermentation. Of course, the Saccharomyces is what works first, and then the Brett strains kick in after that, chew up some of the residual fermentables that are left. And during that process, we inject the fruit into the fermenter, and then a secondary fermentation ensues. The fruit sugars are consumed by the Saccharomyces and to some extent the Brett. And then there's a prolonged aging at ambient temperature. And then the final step is that there's another fermentation that is a longer lasting fermentation on the side, which may or may not involve a mixed culture normally used to produce kombucha. And some of that is blended into the final mix, and voila, you have a synopsis. So again, it's inspired by traditional fruited lambics in its diverse variety of fermentations, its high degree of oak, or a small degree of oak character and a high degree of fruit character, and it's much more accessible and, dare I say, affordable than a traditional barrel fermented lambic, again, which we do quite a few of.
It is so balanced, Phil. I mean, the sourness is just not over the top. The fruitiness is there. The complexities are relatively subtle, and which I like. I prefer. They're not over the top. Is this blended at all?
It is blended. I mentioned the final step is to blend in a portion of the base that was fermented with a different mixed culture over a longer period of time, and then blend it into the final mix. So yes, it is blended, and there are at least 7 different fermentation agents involved in, from start to finish, involved in the production over, some 3 odd months, and then it's ready to go. It's ready to ship. Well, so we're currently sending our beers into 15 states, and then we're adding some what we call high spot markets, where we just send the beer in, send several pallets in, and just repeat, after X period of time, is, when it sells out, when there's demand for more, and just to see, how it does in far off markets. And something like Synopsis has a very long shelf life, so it's good for a long period of time, so it doesn't really change dramatically.
Well, Phil, I'm already seeing a lot of questions pouring in for you. Okay. Can we go ahead and transition to the questions?
Sure thing.
All right. Dan asks, with canned products being so popular, how do you feel about putting traditional beers such as lambics in cans?
I'll admit that it took me a little bit of time, an old timer like me, and somewhat of a traditionalist, but it took me a long time to wrap my head around that idea. And I also had knowledge that can liners are not necessarily designed to handle high acid beers like this, or this is sort of in the middle of the road for what we do. But high acid beers in a can, um, it's not a thing that is going to last indefinitely, and it's somewhat of a scary proposition, because can liners can erode over time with something really acidic, and that can either cause failure of the package. So somebody is maybe cellaring this beer, and then suddenly it's leaking all over their basement or whatever. Or worse than that, the can liner breaks down, and it may not be, it certainly wouldn't be representative of what we would want or any other brewer would want. Um, and there may be a potential health risk with that too. So that's the only trepidation I have at this point, is just the longevity of how long can a typical barrel aged beer, which often is sour, how long can that last in a can? But philosophically, I say, hey, to each his own. Whatever, cans are superior package in many respects, but glass is traditional, bottle's traditional. So I do have mixed feelings, but it's really about the integrity of the product over a similar period of time, where glass would be unchanged and cans might be a problem. Hope that answers your question, but
I think it was a great answer. It's not a matter of preference; it's whether the packaging technology is ready for it or not.
That's correct.
So, Aaron has a question for you, Phil. What excites you the most about opening up Area 2 and creating the beers you do there versus Two Roads?
Well, I enjoy all aspects of brewing. I'll admit, from the types of beers that require discipline and adherence to long-standing techniques. But I also enjoy pushing the envelope and either reinventing certain styles, or maybe coming up with something that, at least in my mind, hasn't been done before. So that's Area 2, represented a way to do some of that more groundbreaking or experimental stuff on a larger scale. Truth is, I've been doing it for years. I've been doing, barrel aging stuff for 25 years, and, always working on things that were, off kilter, or not off kilter, but just a bit non-traditional. And when we opened Two Roads, we had a couple of small buildings, independent outbuildings in the back of the property, that we did barrel aging. Again, even before we opened the doors here, we started doing some experimentation with barrel aged beers and wild beers, and most importantly, isolating yeast from the property. So it's just all of that, having the freedom to do all that in a separate facility that is standalone, has its own basically independent operation, and also the public can come in. To me, that's still always the most rewarding thing about brewing, is to see people at the bar, in the tasting room, having a good time, enjoying themselves, walking out happy, and hopefully walking out with some of our beer. But just the fact that they come in, have a good experience, and walk out happy, and hopefully learning something about beer in the interim.
All right. We've got another good question here. This one might be a little bit lengthy, but I think it's an interesting one. Anshu asks, what is the ideal pH range for brewing hazy New England IPAs? During the mash and final wort pH in the fermentation tank, what about mash temperature profile for brewing New England IPAs?
Well, as Brian alluded earlier, you want a chewiness, a certain body in New England IPAs, and a higher mash temperature usually records that. And then the grist profile, yes, having Some oats in there and perhaps some wheat helps to give that perception of a fuller body, of silkiness, of unfermentables. Um, New England IPA, some of the attributes are very little hop bitterness, so you typically avoid early hop additions to the boil and stick more toward whirlpool additions, or some people don't add any hops at all in the kettle, which that's fine. Um, but I think a key thing is the right yeast strain and the right timing for the first dry hopping, assuming there's more than one dry hopping, to create that biotransformation haze, that still not fully understood phenomenon, that reaction between hop compounds and the yeast that produces that more lasting haze. I mean, that's a key thing. And furthermore, your choice of hop varieties, you tend to, most New England IPAs tend to utilize some of the newer hop varieties. So, those big, bold, citrusy Northwest hop varieties are generally the first choice. And to me, that's the key thing. Wort pH, final beer pH, in my mind, is not a big factor. A lot of hops and a lot of hops added at the right time are two key steps, and I hope that's good advice.
Great. And we've got, I think it's going to have to be our last question, but I think this is one you're particularly prepared to answer. So Eric asked this one: how long have you been brewing sour and farmhouse ales, and how has the process changed for these styles particularly? In other words, when you first got into it to the current styles, has it changed, morphed?
Certainly beer styles in general have changed quite a bit since I first got into it. I started to homebrew in, God help me, 1984. And at that time, and that was truly the dark ages of that hobby. This is, if people can imagine this is before, Y yeast existed, before there were liquid cultures to choose from.
Wow.
So, that was big change. That was the first revolutionary thing when different yeast cultures became available. And yeast cultures that, didn't make everything taste like Hefeweizen, which is what, some of the early dried strains did. But specific to, say, farmhouse ales, which, I'll be the first to admit is a very broad and hard to pin down category, things have changed a lot. And, just to try to keep it simple, focusing on farmhouse ales, when I researched the book, Brett was not part of farmhouse ales, and now Brett is part of a lot of styles in craft brewing, but it is almost hard to imagine a modern farmhouse ale without Brett in it, which is not a right or wrong thing at all. It just, if we could all go back 100 years or so, pretty much any beer we would find probably had Brett in it, because there wasn't the technology, the knowledge to recognize that. And most beer was not shipped far from its source and was not really intended for consumption more than a month or so from when it was brewed. So Brett ultimately, reared its head in styles of beer that where it wasn't intentional, way back when. So in a sense, what people are brewing today, whether it's farmhouse or Brett Pilsners or Brett IPAs, are in a sense a throwback to a long time ago, but now we're doing it intentionally is the difference. So, there's in brewing, craft brewing in general, there's the statement, what's old is new again, is kind of carries a lot of weight. a long time ago, things were aged in barrels because that was the container you had, wooden barrels. But ironically, back in those days, they were lined with pitch, so you wouldn't get the wood flavor. But now that's what craft brewers seek out because it's different. It's different than stainless steel became the status quo, and now oak is new and different. But oak is way older than stainless steel, so it's just this kind of circle of things that comes up in craft brewing. And simple example, Brett now being prevalent in farmhouse ales is an example of something that's old being seen as new again. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's not a lot that hasn't been done before that we're doing today. Not a lot, but there's definitely things that are newer today that weren't done many, many years ago. So kind of a convoluted way to answer your question, but I hope that satisfies you.
Well, no, I think no one is prepared to answer it any better than you are, and that was great. And I can't wait to get up and visit you guys when the opportunity presents itself. I'm not sure when that's going to be. We may have to do another one of these virtually.
Well, I think slowly but surely we're making steps back to normal, but yes, it could be a while.
Yeah.
But our brewery is right off I-95 in Stratford, Connecticut. Just you can see the brewery from the highway, so it's that close. So it's easy on and off if anyone's ever down in southern Connecticut. On the way, say between Boston and New York, is you have to more or less pass right by the brewery, and hopefully we'll be open 7 days a week again as we were before COVID hit. And we have 2 tasting rooms. We have lots of outdoor space, and we have beer to go. And we are also now adding a distillery. So another reason to stop by at Two Roads in Area 2 in the future. So come visit us, Stratford, Connecticut, about an hour from New York City, and right off I-95.
Well, excellent. We're about to move into Fred's part of the program, and I hope you'll hang around, Phil. Cheers.
Cheers, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. That was awesome.
Thanks, Rick.
We'll get back with you in just a minute, Phil. Well, Fred, you have been very kind to wait.
My pleasure. This has been great. I can't wait to go visit Phil. I love those type of beers.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, too. So for our audience, we're at kind of a short break point that we will have in our program. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about in our break was that our event is brought to us by Precision Fermentation, the creator of Brew Monitor, the industry's first comprehensive real-time fermentation monitoring system. Brew Monitor live stream dissolved oxygen, pH, gravity, pressure, temperature, conductivity from existing fermentation tanks to any smartphone, tablet, or PC. Continuous sampling, 24/7 remote tracking, deep data analytics can improve operational efficiency as well as helping prevent problems and ensure batch-to-batch consistency. Well, let's get switched over here to the right scene that I want to have as we bring Fred on. Fred, I've been looking forward to this. I have seen Hoppin Frog beers for quite some time, and, particularly at some of the commercial judgings that I've done. So Fred is listed or is currently the 20th best brewer in the world, according to RateBeer.com. He founded Hoppin Frog Brewery in 2006, and he's been a professional brewer since 1996 and has designed and produced 23 award-winning beers at the Great American Beer Fest and the World Beer Cup. So that's a brewery I want to visit. Tell me about it, Fred.
Gosh, we opened Hoppin Frog in 2006, Akron, Ohio, so it's just south of Cleveland. I like to tell people that we make flavorful beers in the most flavorful styles. And when we first opened, typically that meant IPAs and double IPAs, imperial stouts and the like. But we have just branched off to a ton of different beers anymore because we've been around now about 14 years.
Well, excellent. Now, tell me about the room that I am sort of in.
That is a barrel room. That's not our barrel room, but that's a great picture, isn't it? We got that when we were looking for pictures for our garage doors, and that was one of the 5 garage doors that we printed. I thought that was such a great picture. I thought someday I want a barrel room just like that.
Well, okay, we got our signals crossed, but I love it. I'm like you. I think it makes for a fantastic green screen background, and I will do it again.
It does. It's one of the best pictures that we have. And I'll tell you, we're really known for doing barrel-aged beers, so it totally makes sense. A lot of people think of Hoppin Frog and barrel-aged beers.
Okay, so we'll use that as it sets the tone.
Yeah. Yeah, usually barrel-aged beers are very special, and they're cared for a great deal. But the beer that you're going to feature tonight is not.
Well, let's move into that guy. What do you think?
It's a special beer. I put a lot of effort into it, and I love it. But it's not something that we age, and it doesn't have the years of research behind it that the other guys do. This is just a fun party beer. When we make our beers, oftentimes they're imperial stouts. We're really known for making imperial stouts like Boris the Crusher and the whole series of beers, Doris the Destroyer, Taurus the Tyrant. They're all part of the Boris the Crusher Imperial Stout series, which has won 2 medals at the GABF that are gold, by the way. We have become experts at doing imperial stouts. But what happened a couple years ago was we said, let's shift it. Let's change things up a bit. Let's experiment with doing white stouts. You know, it's kind of like white chocolate. It's not really stout, but it is in a way. So we started experimenting with white stouts. This is one of the many white stouts that we made. And as we were experimenting with them, we had several customers that said, your coconut imperial stout would be wonderful as a white stout. So that basically is what drove this. We said, wouldn't it be great to make a coconut cream pie white stout, but like totally overdo it with the lactose so that it's really full. So that's what we did to make it a pastry stout.
Well, the effervescence, as you can see going through the glassware, really just kind of fills the room with coconut. I mean, maybe more so than if I had a cream pie here.
Yes, it has a lot of coconut aroma. We've had a lot of years experimenting with coconut. We've done a lot of things with coconut, but I must say that this is one of my favorites because the aroma is very assertive. And it balances nicely with the toasted properties that are from the malt, as well as the vanilla that is added to give it that cake-type flavor. It's definitely a pastry white stout all the way. Lots of lactose. The bitterness is less than 10 IBUs. And, of course, the alcohol content is high. Hoppin Frog's known for having high alcohol content in general. All my beers were 6% alcohol or more. And we actually were one of the main breweries that got the alcohol limit abolished for the beers in Ohio back in 2016. So they gave me the gavel from the last court session to remove the alcohol limit. And we made a 17.4% alcohol beer called Gavel Slammer. Gotta get Gavel Slammer. That thing's out of control. Yeah, we can get our yeast to go way high, 17%, but you gotta tickle it in the right spot at the right time. So anyway, this 9% alcohol coconut cream pie is really tasty. But you know, when you're naming beers, you can't just call it coconut cream pie. Everyone uses that name too. So I called it Hoppin Frog's coconut cream pie. That's what we called it. Pure and simple. It's more like a fun beer, you know, something you can just relax around and not have to overanalyze. It's just a fun beer. You know, coconut, a little bit of vanilla, the toasted properties from a little bit of Munich malt, just a little bit.
I have judged a lot of coconut beers, and it seems like so many of them, either you get no coconut, or the coconut is just over the top and you feel like you're drinking suntan lotion.
I've had those too. Yeah, that's inappropriate.
Yeah, your balance is really nice because it's got plenty of coconut, but it's not like pure coconut. Does it have some other ingredients to,
Yes.
I guess, create some pastry aspects to it?
Yes, definitely the vanilla plays into that, as well as the lactose sugar. Those two main components are the ones that drive it home as far as the pastry aspect of it goes. But I must say, part of, I guess, our expertise comes from our openness to get people's opinions. When we had our tasting room open, it was great because I could go over there and get everyone's opinion. And it was wonderful because there was a myriad of people to choose from. I knew exactly when to time it, go over there, and I could get 24 people's opinions. I would take notes, and before you know it, I could, design a great beer by doing that, by asking a myriad of people, whatever walk of life I might want, whether it be, young, where their taste buds are a little more sensitive, or older, where they might want a little more assertive flavor. I usually try to mix everything. So that's one of the things that really has helped us out a lot, is being open with getting people's opinions. I seek out tons of people's opinions all the time. I think that's one of our reasons why our beer is so good. I just don't rely on myself or the brewers' opinions. I get their opinions, but then I ask a ton of other people. I over-agonize over it sometimes, but it lends itself to well-detailed beers, well-designed beers. I used to do electrical engineering, and I would design circuits, etc. Now I look at myself like an engineer, where I'm designing beers. I am a product designer. That's what I do.
Are you an electrical engineer?
That's what I did initially. Yeah. We went to Akron U, and I did that for 10 years. And I realized I didn't want to grow up with a pocket protector. I wanted to have a lot more fun. So
Well,
I did
Phil,
a white collar job, and I went for blue collar, but it's well worth it.
Well, Phil Markowitz was an electrical engineer, as I understand it, as am I. So,
Nice. Very cool.
Ryan, sorry you and Chris got covered up with a bunch of engineer geeks.
I got a few jobs for you guys, actually. I lack knowledge.
Yeah, it lends itself well to brewing. It really does.
Oh,
The engineering approach. I tend to overanalyze things. I would try to numerically represent virtually anything, whereas most people would think, "Oh, I need a half pound or a whole pound," and you're brewing at home. You can do it. I would numerically represent it, and I'd be putting in 0.84 pounds instead of 1 pound, because I had to do a numerical representation of how would it impact the flavor. I would spend a lot of time trying to represent things numerically. That's what I did.
Well, it is. I am just so impressed with the balance. It's just really nice. The clarity is unexpectedly clear. While it's not brilliant, it is just a tad of haze in it. What is creating the haziness?
The lack of filtering. We don't filter any of our beers except for 1 or 2 lagers that we do. I like the fact that we don't filter our beers. Our tanks were set up not for filtering. They're long conical ones where the cones have a steep angle, so it's easier to settle out the sediment, and there's less sediment because there's less cone area. I just spent some time trying to analyze fermenters. And the first ones I had bought back in '96, by the way, they weren't as great for making unfiltered beers. I really learned to love unfiltered beers. So all the other bigger fermenters we bought are designed around settling out the sediment a little better.
Well, that kind of goes back to the question, on hazies. So this is a hazy pastry beer, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, and virtually all of our pastry beers will be hazy. I don't filter much anything, except if we make a Pilsner or something that should be filtered.
Yeah.
Oktoberfest, but that's about it.
Well, Fred, what do you think about we jump into the questions?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Our first one here. Let's see. We got to scroll through them a little bit here. So Jeremy's got the first one for you, Fred. How many bench trials do you perform per week, per month, per year in an effort to discover and create a new beer? And of those, there's more. But wait, there's more. A new beer, and of those trials, how many are home runs, and are there ever any that are just not good? What a great question, Jeremy.
Yeah, I answered the first one for him. I typed it in there a few minutes ago. I was saying that, it's hard to say what a trial is, because sometimes I'll do 40 trials in a week. I'm testing an idea, and the beer's already done, and I'm trying to figure out how much honey to put in something or whatever it might be. And then sometimes it takes a long time. We've spent a long time trying to make things like smoked beer. We have yet to actually make a good smoked beer. That's why we haven't sold a smoked beer yet. So, I've been in business 14 years now. 14 years, and we still have yet to do a smoked beer. Although we got some Lefroy Scotch whiskey smoked barrels. Those were amazing to age our Boris in. And as far as having to throw things out, haven't had to do that yet. The only time I've had to do that is barrel aging, but you expect that when you're barrel aging. You expect that eventually you're going to have to throw something out, because, you got the wild yeast and a lot of crazy stuff going on when you're doing barrel aging. But as far as the experimenting goes, we don't get to a point where we have to throw it out other than a 5 or 10 or 15 gallon batch. We never take it to the big system and then have to throw it out, which is good.
Anybody else done a smoked beer?
We haven't, no.
We have. We've done a smoked wheat with peaches and whatnot. They are tricky to pull off, for sure. I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're a tough sell as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In all my years, I've not done one.
Yep, that's what I found.
Released it. I've done it as a home brewer. And certain people love them.
I love it.
them.
Yeah, Schlenkerla, just love it. But it's got to be done right.
Well, and you also got to be able to sell it. So
Right. That was one of my fears. I remember a decade or more ago, they said that smoked beers really were not appealing when it comes to the brew pub environment, and that's what I came from. I've been doing this for 25 years, so I had that experience from a long time ago. A little harder to sell, but these days, I could see it selling. A lot of people want to try just the craziest stuff. I love it.
Well, Fred, our next question comes from Don, and it's along the lines of the delicious beer we're trying right now. And Don says your coconut stout that he had a couple of years ago was just delicious. How will this ever go into a bottle or distribution, at least to Toledo? And what recommendations do you have for home brewers that are interested in using coconut in their brewing?
That one won't go into distribution, and the reason why is going to be my instructions for a home brewer on how to do this. What we typically did is we would toast coconut flakes that haven't been sweetened, and it's a difficult thing to do because the coconut flakes go from not quite toasted to over toasted and starting to burn within 30 seconds or so. So we had to be really careful with it. That being said, if you're a home brewer, you don't need to do much, and you could do it on one pan. I would suggest 275 degrees in the oven and a half pound per 5 gallon batch. I would usually put them in the secondary and let them age for a good 7 or 10 days. Well, one of the tricks that I like to do as a home brewer, and now as a professional brewer, I do the same thing in just a larger setting. We agitate the beer after aging things for a period. We have a stirring device in the brewery. It's basically like a 5-barrel bright tank, and I have 20-barrel fermenters, so it's 1/4 the size. and I can use it with a pump, and it would allow me to stir in coconut flakes or the like. As a home brewer, you can put in the coconut flakes at, before you fill the secondary or after you fill it. And I like to stir it every couple days by tilting it at like a 30-degree angle and swirling it a little bit to get the liquid to move around in your fermenter. So if you're using, 5-gallon fermenters like that, you can move the liquid around a little bit so the coconut flakes get up into suspension for another minute and get the flavor and aroma out of them a little better.
You indicated the toasting is pretty essential. What happens if you either over toast it or under toast it?
Over toasted, it starts to turn. It starts to smell burnt, and all of a sudden it smells unappealing. But during the toasting process, it causes a caramelization, which causes some of the sugars to be formed more and to turn darker tasting and more assertive and more complex. So if you don't toast them, it really you don't get much flavor out of the coconut. It seems to increase the flavor by like 2 or even 3x. I do that with coconut nibs, by the way, too, just to warm them up a little to get the oils start to get them lightly brown. It tends to bring the flavor out on them. With those coconut flakes, it's essential. Otherwise, you don't get hardly any character out of them. That's why so many coconut beers I think aren't that great. Is it's really hard to find toasted coconut flakes that aren't pre-sweetened. And I keep saying I don't want to use sweetened, and maybe everyone else is in the same boat. I don't know.
So what is a coconut nib? Is that what you said?
Cocoa nib.
Cocoa nib. Okay.
Sorry.
I know what cocoa nibs are. I thought I heard you say coconut nib.
Sorry,
What is that?
Cocoa nib. I treat them, ideally, as a home brewer, you could treat them the same way where you'd want to put them in the oven and brown them slightly just to bring up the aroma a little bit. It really releases the aroma, caramelizes some of the sugars, makes it so much better. It makes it like 2x more assertive as long as you don't get it to a point where it smells like it's starting to burn.
No kidding. I have never done that.
And you know what?
Am I just not with it?
Well, no, not necessarily, but like Indians will do that with whole spices before they cook an Indian dish. They'll pan fry them for a moment. It really brings out the flavor. It's kind of the same thing.
For an electrical engineer, you sound like quite the culinary expert.
I love to eat and drink great beer. Thank you.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of more questions there for you, Fred, but I like that one in particular. David asks, tell us about making shandy. Where do you get your ideas? Is it serious like your big age beers or just a fun sideline?
It's a serious, fun beer. It's really hard to say it's a sideline. It actually, I wouldn't say it dominates our production, but we make a ton of shandy. I'll tell you what, people love it because we have so many different versions. Some of them are just released from the brewery. Twice a year we make this blueberry shandy. The blueberry shandy is one of the most sought after ones, but it requires us to bring in this blueberry puree. It's very expensive to make. So we don't make much of the blueberry shandy, but there's 9 or 10 other shandies that we make. One of them is one of the coolest ones that we had done recently, and we offered through Tavor our pineapple upside down cake shandy. We have so many different shandies that we do. This one, we didn't even bother putting shandy on the label because this was so far beyond the shandy. But the shandies have really become something for us. It originated in 2009. I was visiting the parents in Florida. I saw the Stiegel shandy on the menu. I said, oh, that'd be very refreshing. I should get one of those. And then my sister says, oh, you should make that. And I thought, yeah, I probably should. We started talking about it. One thing led to another. And when I got home, I started experimenting with the base beer that we used for our fruit beer at the time. And I stirred in Country Time lemonade. And boy, did that taste good. So that's how it all started. I reverse engineered it from the ingredient list, thinking, well, I've got maltodextrin. Well, I've got this and I've got that, and I can get this, and I've got citric acid. So before you know it, I was able to build the flavors from the initial components from the ingredients.
So you're still doing it with Country Time lemonade?
No way. No, we're using all the base things from the ingredient list. The first 4 or 5.
Oh wow! Well, I haven't heard that one before, and
that's how shandy line started and it got really popular. Now the highest rated shandy on Rate Beer is our grapefruit shandy. That's still in production, that is.
So Dan Gelding weighed in. He's also an electrical engineer. So the count keeps going up there, Fred and Phil.
And you too.
So Eric asks, when doing pastry stouts, what do you think is the trick for choosing and adding adjuncts as well as choosing the barrels? Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's so open. Pastry stouts, adjuncts. I always think of the lactose sugar being one of the most important ones, but it really depends. Gosh. Lactose sugar is one of the most important ones, but beyond that, I mean, depends what type of pastry you're trying to make.
Okay, and he was also asking about choosing the barrel. If you were doing a pastry stout, is there a particular barrel you would choose?
Well, I was going to say, if you're home brewing, you really have an opportunity to use pastries, which is a wonderful opportunity. I mean, you can really make a unique one-off beer that, could really be a part of history for your home brewing. So, yeah, as a home brewer, I would especially love to do something like that. Be a cookie or a pastry or a cake or whatever. That's a super thing to do. But I'll tell you what, it'll be a mess in the kettle. It'll be memorable. As far as choosing a barrel for a pastry beer, I oftentimes wouldn't do that. But if I would want to get one that has a lot of vanillin, the vanilla-like character from the oak, from the barrel.
Sure.
So I would get one that isn't that used. So I would try to get a bourbon barrel because they only use them once before they have to sell them. And I would want to get one that's more of a common bourbon barrel that they'd only have the bourbon in there 4, 5, 6 years, where they really haven't starved off all the vanillin off the vanilla, so that you could hopefully get some vanilla characters added to that pastry stout in order to benefit from aging in the barrel. And honestly, the longer you age it in the barrel, the more the angel share will evaporate, which is moisture. It's not the alcohol. So it'll concentrate the flavors, and that helps pastry stouts too. Aging for a third or half a year would benefit it too.
Well, that was a good question, and I think we've got another one. I think with your barrel discussion you'll like. So Gary asks, what is the longest aged on wood beer you have done so far?
I threw it out. It never made it to market. Yep, because that's what happens. You go too far, man. I've gone too far more than once. Yep, and that's what happened. It went a couple years. I took my Christmas ale. I went 2 years, and I'm like, shoot, I'll never do that again. And that was 8.6% alcohol. But, the ending gravity was fairly high. It was 6 degrees Plato, so it's 24 SG. So it's bound to, if there's nothing's, even if it's not perfect, and you let it age 2 years at room temperature in wood, yeah, I was asking for trouble. So I've gone a little too long. But I like to sell our Boris the Crusher as our extended barrel aged, because that's aged, close to a year or so. It really takes on insanely good flavors. I usually age significantly less than that because I want to strike the perfect balance between the barrel character and the beer. I spend so much time trying to make my beer perfect. Last thing I want to do is shadow it with the barrel character. So we're trying to strike a perfect balance all the time. That being said, extended barrel aged Boris, man, that barrel character is so awesome. It's almost like doing a shot. But honestly, these days, if I want to do a shot, I'll do a shot.
So how would you avoid that in the future? Just taste it more often?
Yeah, I usually don't age them really long period of time because I like to try to strike the perfect balance. But, if you do and you don't like that being so strong, you can always blend it with the original product if you happen to be making that in reoccurrence, as commercial breweries often do.
Well, Fred, what can we look forward to at your brewery coming up?
I'm glad you asked. One of my white stouts is coming up. We're going to be canning this in just a couple weeks. This is called The Frog Abides. It's a white Russian, white imperial stout, named for the Big Lebowski. The Frog Abides. Get it. What's going on in the next couple weeks. Tomorrow we're releasing a really easy drinking beer. First time we've ever made a beer below 6%. It'll be 5.2%, and it's called Smashing Honey Blonde. It's the first in a long series, I hope, of our Smashing Blonde series. The second one will probably be like a Smashing Berry Blonde. But
Well,
yeah, the Frog Abides is the one that's going to be the rare one. That's going to be hard to get. We're going to can that in probably about 2 weeks. It's a white, it's a white imperial stout, and it has a little bit of coffee and a little bit of vanilla. The Frog Abides. Thanks for asking.
Oh, awesome. Well, thoroughly enjoyed it, and this has been a lot of fun. Can't wait to meet up with you. So cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
And Chris is up next, so don't run away. Fred, we'll get back with you in just a moment. So, Chris, thank you for hanging on into our final segment, and we saved the best for last, right?
Yeah, sure.
Well, we've got a lot of good folks in the crowd, and Fred, I know you're listening. Erin Glass says hi. So good to see her online, and I've also seen Sal and several other names that I recognize here in our crowd. So I appreciate everybody joining us. So I'm going to switch screens here to your place, and it's looking mighty nice as we jump into your introduction and the beginning of your section. As soon as I can get to that, so. I want to begin with Chris Elliott. He and his two friends opened Wild Leap in 2017 with the goal of making high-quality, unique beers with an obsessive focus on quality and consistency. Chris entered the Atlanta beer scene in 2005 as a home brewer and spent almost a decade working at breweries and brew events around the city before finally taking the leap and joining a startup brewery in LaGrange, Georgia. Well, that's actually not too far from me, and I haven't been down there yet. But can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about me first. So around 2005, I became kind of an obsessive home brewer. I was working in the ice cream industry, and I'd work as an ice cream rep from about 9 to 5, and then right around 5 o'clock. At the time in Georgia, there was only a couple breweries, but breweries would open up around 5 or 6 o'clock. They'd pour beer for 3 hours, and it was we were allowed to give tastings. We weren't allowed to sell beer. And I started on the tours and events over at the Atlanta Brewing Company, one of the oldest distribution breweries in the state, and worked there for a while. And I was actually, right after I started working there, I was kind of amazed that they paid you, because at the time, you could drink while you worked. And for me, I had my eye on they had a Sabco Brew Magic sitting back in the back that hadn't been touched in a while. It was actually a 50-barrel brew house that I worked at, and so nobody really paid much attention to the little half-barrel system in the corner. So me and one of the homebrewers that worked there, we'd stay even later in the evening, and we'd homebrew on the Sabco Brew Magic and practice making beers there, and we did that for a good while. And over time, me and our CEO Anthony Rodriguez, or our current CEO Anthony Rodriguez, me and him would occasionally do events and festivals and things at the brewery, and that kind of morphed into doing some bigger festivals, including the Georgia Craft Beer Festival, the first Georgia Craft Beer Festival, and the subsequent Georgia Craft Beer Festivals, working with the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild on that. And so yeah, we really got kind of deep into the beer industry, and over time we had a lot of ideas where we said, if we ever went off on our own, what would we do? How could we do things differently? So right around, I guess it was around early 2016, we got the tip that the city of LaGrange, Georgia, which is about an hour south of Atlanta, was looking for a brewery. They were kind of courting breweries, trying to get a brewery to start a second location. Now, keep in mind, at this time, there are very few breweries in the state at all. Even now, I believe we're a little over 100 breweries in the entire state. But at the time, there are very few, so they wanted to convince one of the other breweries to start a second location down in LaGrange, Georgia, and kind of start to build up the culture down there, gastropubs and coffee shops and everything else. So we got that tip. We started working with the city, and over the course of the the year in 2016, we negotiated a pretty good deal with the city, kind of worked with them as a partner to open up in the city actually owned it was a Chevy dealership from the 1940s that was basically kind of starting to get a little bit run down. So our current CEO looked at it and said, I think that's absolutely the best place we could possibly start a brewery. So it had the character of, we definitely saw something we could remodel. We saw elements of the building, including the original showroom floor and the marquee on the front of the building that we wanted to keep, as well as most of the original brick around the building. So we tore out the floor, rebuilt it pretty much from the ground up on the inside, kept the original exterior, and ended up putting in a 30-barrel brew house and a pretty big tasting room, as well as we definitely over time, because we did so many beer events and we knew there was so much opportunity for beer events, we definitely wanted to have a facility where we could have big events. So we ended up putting in a nice covered stage, a nice plaza that holds about 1,900 people, so we could have regular events there as well. So, and over we're about to turn 3. Definitely all the way up until about COVID, we've had a pretty steady events. We do an annual grilled cheese festival where we have a big grilled cheese competition, all sorts of stuff like that we've had a lot of fun with. In 3 short years, we managed to, I guess we're on our 3rd expansion. We got about cellar capacity of about 930 barrels now, and we're looking at our 4th expansion right now. Last year, we ended up winning the 2019 USA Today 10 Best New Brewery Awards, which we were just absolutely amazed by. So, and just so grateful for. And since then, we've been pretty much as fast as we could possibly grow. We've been growing. We got a distiller's permit, so we finally got into spirits a little bit. Started doing some things like canned cocktails and things like that. So we've actually we kind of realized we did all that in terms of making fresh cocktails and packaging them and selling them to go. We figured that out in perfect timing because shortly after we started doing that, COVID hit, and we realized we needed to do something. So we actually we started taking all of our all of our crowlers that we were doing all of our crowler beer with, started packaging up fresh cocktails, selling crowlers to cocktails. We started we actually got to do more small batch stuff. So we managed to do some more small batch to go cocktails and stuff like that. And we've actually seen a huge increase in to-go sales since that's happened. So we've actually been pretty pleased with how things have gone on the to-go side. So like I said, we're just growing about as fast as we can, as fast as I can put up tanks and figure out how to put them all together. So it's really exciting times down here for us. I'd say, go ahead.
Well, I'm ready to try this lemon ice double IPA while you're talking.
Sure, let's do it.
Can we do that?
Yeah, no problem.
Excellent.
I will say, so as we're pouring, we've kind of found a foothold in the industry we do a lot of big IPAs. We do, I kind of started a project where I made a beer. To me, it tasted so much like juice, actual fruit juice, that kind of became my goal to see just how much can I make beer taste like fruit juice with just the 4 main ingredients of beer. So it's been kind of a quest, and I'd say especially over the last 2 years, we have series like our Alpha Abstraction Double IPA, which is a hazy unfiltered IPA, which is very juice-like. We do a lot of beers like that, and because I spent so much time in the ice cream industry, it just kind of made sense to I guess kind of pay a little homage to that, or a little salute to that by doing some kind of ice cream inspired beers. So with this is our Truck Chaser Lemon Ice Double IPA. What we wanted to do with this was the beer that I said I'd never do. This I know in the early days when we started to try different milkshake IPAs. I was kind of like, oh, what is a milkshake IPA? Where are we going here? And but I realized, before I knocked it, I wanted to see if I could make one. And so I made we started the series with the Truck Chaser Creamsicle IPA. So it was a double IPA. a lot of our beers have a lot of residual sweetness. We're actually, people that like that love it. People that don't, have a much different opinion. But we've kind of played with that a lot. So it's kind of just generally I guess you could say like a lazy yeast that we've found that has, relatively low attenuation. That gives us a nice residual sweetness to the beer. And it plays really well with fruit. So especially when you add, I tend to prefer in beers like this, just because we package them and we send them. Now we're in 10 countries, and we have a little bit of distribution all over the United States. We try to make something that can travel well. So I try to, if I can get my fruit to ferment out as much as possible, I do. So with this particular beer, we added lemon puree. So we added the lemon puree, we let it ferment out, but having that residual sweetness from the beer kind of brings it back. So when you lose a little bit of that kind of sweetness that you'd expect from something lemon, you get it back from that. We added a little bit of lactose as well, not enough to get kind of that kind of milky vanilla to it, but definitely enough to kind of round out and kind of, I guess, make it a little bit more silky. And we kind of finished it off with a little bit of Madagascar vanilla bean. So it kind of just gives it that little, it just makes it a little bit more of a candied lemon versus just kind of like a tart lemon. So overall, the first thing you smell in the beer is just definitely that big kind of that punch of that puree, that kind of sweet puree. And then as soon as you taste it, that's where you start to pick up on that vanilla bean. And that vanilla bean kind of just hangs with you the entire time. So I know I've noticed there's been a handful of breweries that have kind of started incorporating small amounts of vanilla into a lot of their New England IPAs. And it sounds crazy, but it really works. It really belongs there. I've never put vanilla in a big kind of semi-sweet double IPA and not been happy with the results.
One of the things I'm particularly impressed with is the smoothness, as you mentioned, but also a lot of double IPAs have some hop burn to it. I think it's a combination of the alcohol, but this is just really smooth. I mean, it's not bitter at all. Doesn't seem like it is, and the aroma is fantastic. I wondered. I didn't pick up on the vanilla, but when you start adding vanilla beans, you're starting to really make the beer expensive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we try to add as little vanilla beans as possible. So these are beers that, sometimes, especially when we do them for the first time, and a lot of these, again, we're young, and a lot of these beers we're dropping, it's the first time we do them. I generally do most of the design, and sometimes I kind of send it in order before I sit down and talk with the pocketbook of the company, and where we have to sit down and talk about why in the world did we just do that? That was prohibitively expensive. But I'm lucky enough that we started out with a board of people. Most of the people on our board are pretty craft centric, and they've always said, do what it takes, whatever it takes to make the best beer, and then figure out how to make it affordable, I guess you could say. So, and generally, our beers aren't off the charts expensive, but we do tend to kind of lean a little bit more on the expensive side, just in terms of hop rates, in terms of fruit and stuff like that.
Well, it is phenomenal, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. But I want to get to some of the questions. We missed a few with some folks, so I'd like to jump on into the questions if we can.
Sure.
Let's see. All right. Chris. Clearly, Wild Leap takes advantage of your ice cream expertise. Do you have a favorite Wild Leap ice cream inspired brew?
I do. I would say, where the creamsicle in the truck chaser was by far, it was perfect. So a lot of these beers we play with, and this one's no exception. We do a lot of, there's a lot of hop combos. Citra Simcoe, and this one in particular, Citra Simcoe and Belma was a combination that worked really well for us. And with creamsicle, there is sometimes you just make those beers, and before you've added any sort of citrus to it or any sort of vanilla, any sort of citrus to it, you realize that there's a lot of it already there, and especially hops like Citra, Simcoe, and Amarillo, we've really played with those and gotten incredible citrus flavors before we've even started adding any fruit products to it at all. So we've and we're doing a lot of these. We're starting to get a lot of practice with them, and we're pretty happy with where it's going. I'd say the best thing about all of these ice cream beers, though, is or all these milkshake, I guess, kind of style beers that we've done so far, is how incredibly dynamic they are. So because it's a double IPA, because we use a pretty healthy dry hop on it, day 5. Sometimes the hops are just starting to overpower the fruit a little bit, and you'll get a little bit of vanilla, but you get a big kind of not quite a hop burn, but you start to get a very prominent hop. Once it gets to about day 10, that starts to drop off a little bit, and you get somewhere in between. And then usually around day 15, between day 15 and day 30, we start to notice just an incredibly balanced beer where it's not. You can tell it's a double IPA, but it's not just screaming, hop burn, New England IPA. It's definitely becomes a little bit more balanced. But depending on what you like out of a double IPA, especially some of the hazy stuff, we've realized that this is, it can kind of dictate when it's best to try some of these beers.
Chris, what did winning USA Today's 10 Best Brewery of the Year fan voted award a few years back mean to you and the brewery?
Well, for us, again, we were just incredibly grateful because I'd say since we started this process, we've been kind of running so fast, and we've kind of kept our head down the entire time, where all we're doing is just trying to do what we do as good as we possibly can. And sometimes you just look up and you realize there's a lot of people smiling and saying, "Hey, we really like your beer. Like this is my favorite beer. I named my child after your beer." I haven't heard that one yet, but I think but if I do, it'll be great. But yeah, it's just sometimes you look up and you just it's just amazing to see. It just completely blew us away. All we're doing is working as hard as we can, day in and day out, trying to make the best beer we can. And it was just a huge shock, but just so grateful for it.
Chris says can't wait to meet a kid named Alpha Abstraction. Well, speaking of that. So do you have a favorite Alpha Abstraction version of Wild Leap? What's your favorite version that Wild Leap is?
Yeah, my favorite Alpha is the most recent Alpha. So we have, I'd say our style right now is, because of kind of the distribution situation that we're in our state, we can't self-distribute. So we really depend on our partners and our retailers to move our product, as fast as possible. And especially beers like this, these are unfiltered double IPAs. These aren't infinite shelf lives. We try to keep them, they're all unfiltered. So we really try to manage, I call it kind of allocation management. So what we try to do is we try to kind of figure out where the beer belongs best, and we work with our distribution partners as best as we can to make sure nobody's buying, 80 cases and it's going to sit there, for 6 months and people are going to be disappointed with the beer. One of the best things about our Alpha Abstraction series, which is basically a hop feature series, is the fact that, we'll come out with one and generally we'll sell it. We know not everybody's going to drink it in 5 to 15 days like we want them to, but generally by about day 60, we're already coming out with the next one. So we're moving on to the next Alpha Abstraction. And it's kind of a signal to everybody who enjoys the series that, okay, the last Alpha is starting to get a little, let's move on to the next one. And it's really just this kind of new, everything I've ever learned about beer coming up in the industry was about shelf stability and less about freshness, And this is kind of one of those things where we don't have a choice. If we want to survive, we got to figure out how to get this out fresh. If I want the people to taste the beer like, I want them to, it's got to be fresh. So we spend a lot of time kind of making sure that beer moves like that. So generally, to answer the question, I'm really excited the day where it's time to pack the next Alpha Abstraction series. So right now we just came out with, this is our most recent one. This is Alpha the 13th. So we got cute. Oh, spell that on the computer. We got a little cute with the, a little bit of a horror theme on that one.
Very cool.
We're doing Sabro. So we're playing around with some Sabro Cryo on this one. So that was, and oddly enough, I spend all day, every day looking at hop availability, and I have no idea how I missed that there was a good bit of Sabro Cryo in the market. But as soon as I saw that, I snatched it up, and that instantly became the next Alpha. So, and right now, you guys mentioned earlier, I think was it Ryan? You mentioned the tangerine. Sabro has always been a coconut hop to me until this version of the series. To me, it is just absolutely just a lime tangerine with just coconut somewhere in the background. It's absolutely unique. It's a very, very distinct hop. We did one with HBC 472, which is we call it super Sabro. It takes it beyond coconut and into that kind of bourbon wood, but it still has the citrus element with it too. So it's just an incredibly just strange and amazing combination for a hop. But we're really happy with the Sabro one.
We got another question along that same line. Edward asked this: what hops do you feature in the ice cream beer, such as lemon drop?
So we do. I try to play with the. I try to find hops that kind of mimic and kind of work well with the fruit that we're using. So we were talking about. We had one where we used a lot of kind of the hops that are a little bit more on the citrus side. Again, like the Citra, and Simcoe, and stuff like that have a little bit more of a citrus character to it. We love the base beer in that, but when we started playing with things like strawberry, we did a strawberry shortcake version in the series. We realized there was almost a clash early on where we really we like that 5 days where or the first 5 days where you start to get a little bit more of that kind of double IPA feel to it. We realized the citrus was kind of clashing with the strawberry, so we realized something like Barber Rouge or different hops like that should be kind of tailored to it. So this was one, the lemon ice double IPA. We had just done an alpha where we used some Velma, an alpha abstraction where we used some Velma hops, and we just loved this bright soft citrus that we got from it. So we realized that would just be perfect for just getting a little bit of kind of a simulated lemon pith to kind of fill in in the lemon ice. So, and it worked out fantastic. Like I said, if we're starting to taste elements of the beer before we've added the fruit, if we're starting to get lemon before we add the lemon, we're on the right path. So I think that's kind of the direction that we're heading now in that series.
All right. And another good question. Your Wild Leap vodka has been doing pretty well since its inception. Are there any other spirits on the horizon for Wild Leap?
Absolutely. So right now, the only problem when you get into spirits is that the really good ones take a really long time, a lot of times. So we've already gotten that moving where we're starting to get, we're trying to figure out our distilling program. We know whiskey's definitely going to be happening. In the meantime, we know we definitely want to start working on some gin. We have a lot of very unique ideas for gin. So I think that's probably going to be the next step. It's anything that doesn't have to sit for a long time in a barrel is probably going to be the next thing we release for obvious reasons. and then maybe in 3 to 5 years we'll all sit around and have some delicious Wild Leap whiskey as we kind of work that out. But that's definitely a huge program we want to grow. We've realized especially in rural Georgia. Surprisingly, well, actually not surprisingly, there's no shortage of people who distill around here, but we've also realized that they distill very different things. So there's a lot of we have some of those backwoods moonshiners and stuff like that have kind of reached out to us, and so they're not quite the barrel pickers and stuff like that. They can make a really good, really potent moonshine. So, but we're still searching for just kind of that distiller that has that level of I guess expertise right now as well. So I guess if you know one, hit us up.
Well, and that's been an adaptation since we've been in quarantine and all that, right? That's a big changeover for your business.
Yeah, it's been huge. And one thing that surprised me, despite being very, very close with my partners and one of their wives who's actually in charge of our entire tap room program for all of our cocktails. I never knew until we got our distilling permit that she was quite the mixologist. And on top of that, I realized that I was kind of very narrow-minded in terms of how I felt about even vodka and vodka cocktails. I was like, what are we going to do with vodka? And boy, I was so incredibly surprised. One of the first cocktails she made was kind of a simulated she called it lime in the coconut, where we actually, it was kind of like a pina colada. It was so good. I went home and I tried to make it for days, and I never figured it out. And I realized that it's a lot harder than I thought to make stuff like that. And since then we've moved on. We've started. We have a creamsicle mojito. So we figured out how to make a pretty good creamsicle beer. We said, let's try to make a creamsicle cocktail. So we combined it with actually making a mojito, and it was just unbelievable. And I realized, there's so much more out there. I've always just been such a beer drinker. I was never the type to go to a bar and order a cocktail. So now I got a lot of making up to do. So I'm gonna try to see if I can balance that with drinking my beer every day, I guess.
And how has this impacted your business overall? Because the quarantine has, I'm sure, been tough.
Sure. So we sat around the conference room on pretty much the last day that we knew our tap room was going to be open. The last day would be responsible to be open, and kind of worked on our plan to, how are we going to close our tap room when we have all these, we got a pretty good 50-50 crowd now. We've got, 50% of people are showing up for beer and 50% of people are showing up for these cocktails. So we realized we had a lot of crowlers. We had about, in my opinion, we probably had about a year's worth of crowlers in terms of the movement in our tap room for our beer. So we decided to start, we said, times are getting tough for people. Let's go ahead and let's do a $20 crowler, family style crowler of a delicious fresh made cocktail. So we started batching bigger batches of cocktails. We started filling the crowlers, and almost overnight we were selling about 115 or 120 of these $20, crowlers of cocktails that were very strong too. We realized I've never finished one. And
the whole crowler?
Yeah, the whole crowler. So in a week and a half, my year's worth of taproom crowlers were depleted, and we realized that we had a bigger issue because we were also, we ramped up our small batch stuff to try to sell more small batch stuff through the taproom. So we started doing. So we realized we were kind of in a panic to try to get some aluminum. So but then we realized, hey, we got a canning line right here. Let's just start canning our cocktails. So we started actually hand canning all of our cocktails and selling 6-packs of cocktails. So it's actually been great. Business has been probably up a little bit more than it was before COVID in terms of total taproom sales. So it's worked out really well for us just to diversify in that way. And we've realized that this is just kind of the way things are going right now. The more you can diversify, the better. So it's worked out really well for us.
I love that, and that's very inspiring. We have about 2 minutes left. But would you take one of those minutes and just tell us a highlight coming up on the brewery, and then I will close out and say thank you to everyone?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, we have we're about to do our 3-year anniversary. We were so excited. Every year we try to make more and more beers and to have on tap during that anniversary. And I think last year we got up to something like 60 beers that we had on tap for just the 4 or 5 hours that we were open. And now we've realized that's probably not going to happen. So we're trying to figure out a distribution model for that. So we are just going to flood our market with tiny allocated small batch anniversary beers. We've also just expanded a little bit to where we can start doing a little bit more of just the really heavily hopped, really expensive beers. Now that we're doing so much taproom sales, our beers don't have to go through distros, so we can put a little bit more hops, a little bit more fruit in them. So we got a lot of really big fruited beers, really big, just heavily hopped beers that we've been wanting to do for a while. It's just too expensive usually to kind of get out into the market. So look for that. That's coming soon.
Well, you're not too far away. I'd look forward to getting down there sometime. Gentlemen, Chris, cheers. But to everybody else, this was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. I see get Chris's label here to show. I appreciate everybody joining us. I appreciate the audience. We had a huge audience and a lot of fun, really active chat. We've had some delicious beers, and we've had some fantastic brewers. So cheers. I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun. We do this every month.
Cheers.
So we look forward. Cheers.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody have a great evening. We'll look forward to seeing you next month and catching the podcasts, which will come from this. So we'll have 4 podcasts from this. So good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.